Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. About a week ago, Gaijin made a post saying information regarding the Thai subtree and Chinese vehicles. We went over it and basically they non-answered a bunch of different things, talking about the VT4, talking about how they didn't want to annoy anybody and they were sorry if people felt annoyed. Then they talked about some subtrees that they were adding for some reason for additional content, and they also talked about the bug reporting system not being perfect because basically of human error, and also collecting information not being perfect because of human error, which to be honest is very much reasonable, but that's never going to be an answer that satisfies people. So what you ended up having is a post with a bunch of stuff which was very well worded PR, which didn't mean anything. And this is the problem with these types of posts. It's all well and good putting all this information out there and then throwing in some kind of crumbs of information about new vehicles, hoping that people will focus on the new stuff. But unfortunately, when you have a set of very rabid people who prefer to talk about these specific topics and want answers about it, it's not going to work. And what we've seen from the outcry from this message, which was mainly aimed at the Chinese community, but also other communities, which right now are using this to basically put their own flag up and go, hey, what about us? It basically means we're having a bit of an issue and a small crisis, at least on the forums in War Thunder. Now remember, when it comes to the forum in War Thunder, it's a very small percentage of the player base who actually use it. The same with kind of the Reddit and also many other areas. But it is usually the people who are mostly invested in the game and also interested in the game in terms of at least talking about it, and that's something that you see quite a lot. And as always, especially in the current climate of the world, there's a lot of geopoliticking going on. And of course, we have to do that in games now, because even though after many years of being told that most people just want politics out of video games, it turns out that's just not true. They just want a specific set of politics out of video games and not their set of politics. It's weird how that all goes. So, after about a week, Esmin put in the thread, "Hello everyone, thank you for your feedback so far. We are currently reviewing your feedback regarding our consideration for Singaporean vehicles. We aim to provide a detailed update in the next community update news coming soon." Because they're going to do a new community update news because, well, the next update is actually not too far away when it comes to War Thunder, since it's usually around the 1st of November. So this fire has been raging basically since the previous update, where a lot of people got annoyed about a vehicle getting added to a tech tree that it never got added to. And there is still actually no information about whether it was going to be added to it in the first place, and people are just believing that it was going to be because the leaker said it was, even though it never was. So we're just kind of sat here in a very interesting situation. And now, with this post, information regarding the Thai subtree and the Chinese vehicles, it's just set more stuff alight. Because, first of all, they said Indonesian stuff is going to go to Japan as kind of a future subtree to try and balance it out. It seems like nobody has an issue with that. What people seem to have an issue with is Singapore going to China. And this is coming from both sides of things. So it's coming from the international community, and it's also coming from the Chinese community. So from the Chinese community, the main thought is, why does China need Singapore vehicles? China has its own vehicles. They should develop the own domestic vehicles, which, to what I say to this, is yes, they are doing that, and they will do that going forward, just like they did with all of the other subtrees. If you have a look at Britain, for example, and you have a look at the addition of South Africa, the South Africa added a bunch of cool light vehicles. They also added some AAs and some other things, which I think people can be very thankful for. It actually helped the tree out quite a lot, and have kind of, well, most of them are very fun to play. But at the same time, if you have a look at what else was added to the British tech tree, it's not as if the development of the South African vehicles stopped other ones from British descent being added, such as, if we talk about light vehicles, they added stuff like the Desert Warrior, for example. The VFM5 also turned up, which is another one which is kind of fun. Also, if you have a look at the scimitar or the fox, which were both brought in too. You also have stuff like the AAs, where they had, of course, the Bosvark and the Eastervark and also the ZA-35. But for Britain, they brought in the skink, they brought in the rapier, they brought in the Osa, and also the Strela and the Stormer, and even the Sky Saber more recently. So you can see that they can develop both of the nations basically at the same time. And it's a way of adding new content to the tech tree alongside the others. So this idea that if they decide to add Singapore to the Chinese tech tree, which seems to be what they want to do, that means that it's taking away from that tech tree because they're going to stop developing vehicles from the domestic nation. Makes no sense, because we've literally had a bunch of sub-tech trees in the game already, and that hasn't happened. So why would it happen in this situation? And the idea that they don't need the vehicles, I mean, sure, why not? If you want to keep the Chinese tech tree pure, and if you want certain gaps in certain areas, or if you want to play the same, or if you want to play the same vehicle over and over again with just different variants of it over and over again, if you want to play the Mark 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 vehicle to make up a lineup, sure, you can do that. But most people aren't going to play the same thing 5 times over. Most people aren't as insane as me. So basically, yes, I suppose that is a thing. If you want to be very nationalistic about it, and if you want to keep it pure, just, you know, the Chinese bloodline of the Chinese tree will stay pure, then yes, you can do that. But in my opinion, it's not a very strong argument, especially since it may bring more people to the Chinese tech tree and more people enjoying it. But because of the fact that they bent the knee before, when it comes to the VT4 stuff, and also with a few other things, acknowledging the grievances and apologizing for any offense given, now, because they're on their knees, people are going to turn up with baseball bats and they're just going to smash them in the face. Because when it comes to the internet, apologizing and also not giving full clear answers is a recipe for disaster. And that's exactly what Gaijin has done here. It's exactly what they did in 2023, because people do not back off, actually. What they do is they double down and go harder, because they don't care about your apologies. They don't care about you actually trying to tickle their egos. They just want you to do what they want. And that you can't do, because you have multiple people with different opinions who want different things. So you're just screwed. So what you have to do is you have to do what you want to do, and you just have to either deal with the consequences or you have to deal with the rest of it. There's nothing else you can do. Like, seriously, you cannot satisfy all sides. So you just have to go with what you think's right. And that sucks, because you're going to annoy people, but whatever you do, you're annoying people. Because the only way that you don't annoy people in this situation is you don't make the decision and you don't add anything. And if you do that, guess what? It annoys them too, because they tell you that, why don't you care about my nation? So there's no winning. There's absolutely no winning with this. So the other side of the coin, which is, at least in my opinion, a bit of the lesser side, is the ties between Singapore and China. So a lot of the international community have talked about what is the link between China and Singapore in terms of the countries. Well, just from the outside, they have a very, very, very similar, I don't know how you would class it as, but genome, would that be the best way of putting it? Basically, their cultures and also their people are very much from the same descent. The other thing is, if you have a look at any polls that have been done over the more recent years or even previous years, Singapore actually sees China pretty favorably, and then also the other way around. So geopolitically, they at least have some kind of alignment in that way. And also, the fact is they're in a similar area in the world, which obviously helps too. So from that point of view, if you want to go down that road, there are reasons to actually put these things together too. So that side of things also would make more sense. But the thing is, as I said, you are dealing now with just a mess. And it's going to, the only way that Gaijin wins this and technically satisfies all parties is by not playing the game and by not adding anything and just leaving the tech tree to rot and not adding in any of these nations in any other way. All of these people saying, oh, well, you should make like an Asian tech tree where it just adds all of these nations together. That also doesn't work, because what happens is you actually annoy all the people from those areas too, because they do not feel represented, and also you might be putting together a bunch of nations which also don't like each other in real life. So there's no winning. There's just losing with this, which is why you don't bend the knee and you just do what you think is right. And if people get annoyed at that, people get annoyed at that. What are they going to do? Are they going to stop playing? Are they going to review bomb the game because they added a vehicle that they didn't like? I mean, I suppose they could do that, but surely that, just like how in 2023, when a lot of the reviews were removed because they were incredibly botted by certain parts of the community, couldn't you just do the same thing here? I don't know. Like, surely the average person would look at that and be like, okay, so people are review bombing the game because they added a vehicle to a tech tree. Okay, that doesn't make any sense. But who knows? Who knows? It's an impossible position, and as I said, the way that you win is by not playing. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.